Hi, welcome to this month's Tour Health and Wellness Workshop. It is the last one of the year. I'm Hillary and I'm joined by Carrie Ann today. Hi, Carrie Ann.
Hi,
How are you?
I am doing well. How are you?
Doing well. I love to have this workshop as something that I was preparing for this week because it has forced me to be really intentional about rest and really get in the spirit to have this conversation. So I'm excited. For those of you who don't know, Carrie Ann is our Neil Casal Clinical Fellow this year. We are really honored to have her support. And big thanks to the Neil Casal Music Foundation for making that possible. So on this webinar, you're welcome to ask questions in the chat, raise your hand, and we can bring you up, or you can just write text questions. We are happy to answer anything that comes through. And let's get started talking about rest. My intention for this is that folks can learn a little bit about the different approaches to rest and the benefits of it, and really find a way to investigate what works for them and start to look at rest as a necessary and amazing thing that we can call into our lives in a variety of different ways. Rest is important. I think we all know that, but it can also be elusive and hard to figure out. It's something that we have to be intentional about, and it takes some trial and error to figure out what works. Rest is not just about nights in and self-care and naps, but it's about figuring out what recharges your mind, body, and spirit and how to tap into that. Any opening thoughts as we get into this conversation, Carrie Ann?
I just really love just the expanding of it. I think that it can feel really elusive. It's like, of course, I know I should rest, but I think I'm excited about how we're going to talk about it kind of on a continuum and a lot of different ways of kind of stepping into thinking about rest, and maybe rethinking about rest. And yeah, I think hopefully there'll be some good nuggets for people to kind of grab onto.
No doubt. As I knew we were heading into this chat, the first thing that came to mind to me was the amazing work of Tricia Hersey and the Nap Ministry. And I want to read just a quick quote from Tricia here to kind of set the tone of what we're talking about. She says that rest is anything that connects your mind and body. Capitalism was created on plantations during chattel slavery and is the same system that is driving the entire globe to exhaustion and a deep disconnection with our bodies and minds today. Begin the process of deprogramming from your brainwashing under grind culture. Go slow, learn history, learn your own history, view your body as its own unique technology. Listen. I love that call in to view your body and really listen to that. So many of us have a long history with rest that I think is often understated or subtle, right? We've been sleeping since we were babies. And so with that comes a lot of different stages of rest. And I think as we get into adulthood and we get into the music industry, for those people here today, rest can really turn and change with the seasons of our lives. And I think what this conversation is meant to do is to provide exploration into what season of rest are you in, and what might you be able to do, but it's all a personal journey. And so I love that invitation to really dive into both the history of rest, the history of grind culture, as well as what your own body chemistry is looking for and can really utilize on your journey to thrive. Often the tips that we hear about for rest and sleep, I think, are unattainable for most of us in the music industry. I know my crazy travel schedule really made me think rest was something that I came upon sometimes and was grateful to have it. There's a long history of like the Festival 4, which is your ideal sleep time in working a music festival is 4 hours. And that really never worked for me. Of course, you can push through seasons in which you can't tap into rest as naturally, but it really will catch up on you. And so in sort of working in this industry and knowing that it's not a restful experience, I was struggling last year. And one of the things that really helped me was a book by Dr. Matthew Walker, who is a sleep researcher, called Why We Sleep. And in reading that, I learned that within the brain, sleep enriches a diversity of functions, including our ability to learn, memorize, and make logical decisions. It also recalibrates our emotions, restocks our immune system, and fine tunes our metabolism, regulates our appetite, and so many more things. And so in learning about, the benefits of sleep and really what the goal is, I was able to sort of recognize, okay, I do need to do some work on this because those are all things that I want to be functioning at a super high level. I want to feel regulated in my emotions, have a strong immune system, especially now, and really start to lean into the idea that though my sleep may not look like my parents' sleep schedules, that it's still a worthy cause and something worth investigating. I will drop a link in the chat for those of you who are interested in reading Why We Sleep. But that was a really helpful starting place for me and sort of leaning into what sleep and rest might be able to do to benefit me. So one of the things in the book that they say is to find a consistent sleep and wake time. That's not possible for me. Some days I go to sleep at 8 p.m., some days it's 2 a.m. And so what I've really been focusing on is trying to find a consistent 8 hours a night. Some days it doesn't happen, and that's all right. I've also stopped guilting myself around the sort of what could have been, but finding it something that worked for me, which was, okay, if I do go to sleep at 2 a.m., can I push it and sleep until 10 a.m.? And just sort of setting consistency of a number of hours rather than a sleep and wake time. Another thing that's been really helpful for me in sort of this rest journey is giving myself time to defrost my brain in the morning, have a morning routine so that I'm not waking up and jumping straight into the day. That actually takes away the benefits of the wonderful rest that I've just gotten. And so giving myself a full hour in the morning before my brain really needs to be functioning and really digging into a morning routine that works for me has been helpful. A lot of what I'm talking about right now is nightly rest, but as we know, there are so many different kinds of rest. And I'm excited to have you with me because I know that you really can talk about a wider breadth of ways to rest and things that it might do to you. So I'm curious to hear your intro here to this conversation.
Yeah. So I think my interest in, I think when I think rest outside of sleeping and sort of napping or getting that kind of rest, I really think about slowing down. So that's kind of what comes up for me when talking about rest outside of sleeping or napping or those sort of very passive rest type things. And that is an interest that came out of my work as a hypnosis practitioner. So spending a lot of time with people, helping them slow down, helping them relax their bodies, helping them feel a sense of ease. Really, I also think of space, right? Which is like when there's tension, there's not a lot of space. So thinking about making space within ourselves, but also making space in our lives and our day. And sort of what helps us feel at ease and what nourishes us. So those are kind of the things I've been thinking about as sort of moving toward this conversation today, as sort of other ways of just sort of thinking about, or you know, even like journaling or asking ourselves about slowing down or feeling nourished or resting. And so, I mean, just to kind of give like an example, is like getting curious about how you can, like, even if you have a crazy day, like, can I get up from my desk and like walk a little slower to the bathroom? I mean, that's so tiny, but it actually, you know, can sort of give you a little pocket of a different pace, sort of like a taste of it. Or can I get up and, you know, go walk and get my lunch a little slower and notice everything around me? So I guess this idea of like pockets of slowness or pockets of awareness, pockets of rest is kind of what's been floating around for me.
Yeah, I think that when I started to dive into mindfulness, I didn't realize that it was going to be so connected with rest. But I love the concept that you introduced of space, because that is something that mindfulness has given me a lot of. It's a matter of leaving my phone on the charger, you know, when I wake up, and having coffee and having, you know, a moment without any external stimuli. That creates space in my life that helps me to feel grounded and really nourishes me. I didn't realize, you know, until a few months into my mindfulness journey, that that is rest for me. It's finding pockets without anything going on, sort of ways to cut out the noise. Sometimes that looks like, for me, trying to separate, you know, from people when I'm out at a show, and just saying like, hey, I'm, you know, going to put my head down today and watch the show or work the show, and, you know, really don't have the social battery right now to socialize, which is a hard conversation, I think, to have, or at least it was a few years ago, but it's become easier the more that I practice sort of inventorying myself before I'm in a situation where I have to be around people, and then being okay with being honest of what those needs are. So like, hey, wonderful to see you. I'm, you know, need to just kind of stay in my own lane today, and looking forward to catching up soon. Felt so awkward the first time that I said that, but I was able to sleep well that night. I didn't feel drained the next morning. You know, I was able to like really listen to what I needed and say that out loud. And I think as we continue to see the culture in the music industry shift and be more accepting, you know, of people having a variety of different kinds of days and a variety of battery charges, essentially, it's become more normal to sort of lean into those things. And rest, I think, is still on this like cusp of not really being normalized in the music industry. And so I'm trying to push that forward in my own life and my own relationships as something that I'm prioritizing. And therefore, here's what I need today. And being okay with people knowing that, right? It's okay to have a drained battery, and to still have to show up to work. Like, there can be some level of honesty there. That doesn't mean I'm not going to do my job well that day. It just means that I'm coming into it and sort of knowing myself far more than I did a decade ago when I started this work.
Yeah,
Go ahead.
there's a couple things that kind of, well, stand out to me about that. Is one is being able to sort of recognize what you need, right? Like taking the time ahead of time to really like recognize what is it that's going to help me feel like I can sort of, this is sustainable for me when I'm working and I'm around a lot of people and there's a lot of energy. And then learning to set boundaries, which is not always easy. And also just like allowing yourself to be human, and then like talking about that, right? And really, I think I can only imagine that that's like, that helps other people start to maybe think about that, or be willing to be honest. It's vulnerable, but it's like, we're not machines. We're human beings that have limits. Yeah.
Absolutely. And I think, we are divine machines. And so looking at us in both ways, right? So we have to perform a variety of functions every day, including breathing. And we are designed to do that, but we need to turn it off and turn it back on again sometimes, right? Or, get routine maintenance done. And so kind of figuring out what those pieces are that are going to allow you to sort of optimize rest and enjoy feeling rested. And I think that, so much of what I do in my daily life is focused on seeking joy. So it might be like, my morning walk is one of my joyful experiences. It might be catching up with a friend or whatever, but feeling rested allows me to tap into that joy in so many more things, including, checking a to-do list box at work. I'm able to sort of like plow through something, get it done, check the box. And that to me is really joyful. When I'm running on like a super low battery, I can get that work done and experience no joy in the process. And so recognizing that like greater rest and having more rest in my life allows me to experience more joy. And you and I have talked about this, more creativity. And so I think it's like this ultimate quest that we can all choose to go on, which is, how can I feel more rested? How can I tap into things that feel restful? And that could be sleep or slowing down, but it's also sometimes for me, spending time with friends or going to see a show and sort of being intentional about your objectives for each opportunity and each moment in the day. So I used to always find social obligations to be really draining on me. And now I'm able to say, okay, I want to go to dinner with this person, or I'm going to call this friend because it really energizes me to connect with them. And recognizing that not every one social situation is going to be the right thing for you in that moment in time. What are other types of active rest that you think this community would benefit from?
So I'll just sort of share some pieces that I do that are helpful for me, and then we do have, I'll kind of go over some resources that the clinical team put together that really kind of like puts active rest in different categories, which I think is super helpful. But I'll just sort of share a quick piece, which is like, I'm someone who gets a lot of rejuvenation from quiet and silence. So I guess this is sort of an active rest thing, but so I'm sitting in this chair where I sit in the morning and just like stare out the window. And it's so simple, but there's a tree right out there, and like right now it's bare. And so like to have sort of just some time where I'm drinking my coffee and I'm just staring out the window, and sometimes it's daydreaming, sometimes it's noticing the tree and like all the different textures and the colors. Even just sort of looking at a tree, which is like super grounded and rooted and solid, can sort of just really even shift our perspective. So for me, that's kind of a daily practice that I've been doing. And if it's warm out, I can do it outside. But just sort of something that doesn't really like, cost anything or really require anything, but just sort of allows me to just sort of like have that quiet and that focus and sort of that groundedness.
I appreciate that we're having this conversation as we're leaning into a little bit of downtime for most people in the music industry. That might include visiting family or traveling somewhere, but it's time off potentially from shows, maybe a week, maybe 10 days, maybe longer. And so this really does provide an opportunity to find some of those things that work for you, like coffee without stimuli. Like, what a revelation. I know at the beginning of the pandemic, we were locked in our houses and alone. And so I was drinking coffee at that time and like trying to connect with the outside world, checking my emails, checking social media, and sort of like trying to feel some level of connection. And now, whether I'm feeling super connected to my community or have had some time off and some time alone, coffee without stimulation outside of the actual caffeine has been really helpful in just grounding me into myself. And that's a really good place to start, I think, for a lot of people. The other thing that I've been practicing just in the past few months is trying to get set with the circadian rhythm of wherever I am. And so one of my non-negotiables now is trying to get outside within the first hour of waking up, get some sunlight. If that's happening here in Portland, it's often not, but just sort of, okay, it's light outside, I'm waking up, I'm starting the day. That's been really helpful for me because otherwise I could go 3-4 hours without getting outside and sort of no concept of time, or where I am in the world. And I think wake time and wake routines are not often talked about in rest, but are actually really helpful to this sort of overall concept of rest, and probably fall into that active rest category too.
Absolutely. And I think that the learning to have the moments of rest or the active rest or the things that might rejuvenate or feed us, I think then spills over into helping us actually be more prepared to sleep. So we're not kind of going from like 100 to 0. We're sort of finding more of a sort of a flow throughout the day. So one of the sort of just, if we break this down into, of course, we have physical rest, which we've talked about, you know, sleeping at night, taking naps, maybe physical rest could include like stretching or yoga or even breathing. And so we can sort of tend to the physical body in these ways that might give us energy or help us rejuvenate. Even nutrition. Like one thing that I was also thinking about today is that when it gets cold, I'm in New York and it's cold right now, and I drink warm water. So like if I do like a half hot water, half room temperature, and like that helps me. One, it just feels really nourishing, but it helps me get the amount of water I need, that if it's not warm when it's cold out, I'm just not going to drink as much water. So what are the physical ways that we can kind of that's not rest, but that's nourishment, right, and taking care of ourselves. We can look at cognitive rest, so giving our minds a break. You were talking about checklists or to-do lists. So like, I know a lot of folks will do that in the morning, and it can help them sort of feel like they have a focus for the day. And then you kind of can get through that. Maybe even some rituals about like moving. And this might not always be as clear, you know, if folks are on the road or working, but like what are the transitions between work and rest? You know, what are the things that you need to let your brain know, like, oh, it's time, I'm going to start slowing down. Like my day is done, I'm going to start slowing down. What can you do to sort of like, you know, two or three things that actually help your brain and your body start to move in that direction?
What is that for you? I'm curious.
For me, that is, so I do this thing which I didn't realize I did until you just asked me. But I kind of do this thing before I do my bedtime routine where I like pull back like my sheet of my bed and I'm like, I just sort of like, I'm like, it's ready for me. And that's like a, you know, I didn't even think of it until now, but like, it's like, I just sort of pull it back. It looks nice. Like maybe someone did that for me if I was in a hotel. And then I kind of do my bedtime routine, which would be just sort of like, you know, washing my face and brushing my teeth, maybe taking a shower, but not always. I usually will have like a cup of warm water, and then I read. Reading is my transition, and reading in bed is like one of my favorite things to do. And when I do need extra rest, that is something that I'll do. Like I'll go to bed I'll get into bed at 8 and I'll read for an hour and a half, and that's to me like one of my favorite things. And then I have kind of just once I'm done reading, I have kind of like a little bit of a just like meditation that I guide myself through, which is really just like a simple relaxation.
Yeah, breath work has become one of my sort of last things that I do before I go to bed. And it is something that you can walk yourself through, which I find really helpful. I try hard to not have any electronics in my bedroom, which is tough, especially for folks here who might be in a tour bus. That means your charger is right there and your phone is right there. So utilizing sleep mode has been helpful for me when I'm in a hotel room or something like that. But actually, you know, keeping those things out of the bedroom and only having either books or breath work, or a journal, right? And I find journaling to be really helpful, even if it's just those bullet points of like, what are the things that I'm stressed about that are going to keep me up tonight? I'm going to go ahead and like address them now, get them out, and be able to look at that in the morning as part of my to-do list for the next day. I think, you know, being at home and sort of in this season of what is about to be restful for me, it's easy to kind of feel like, oh yeah, rest is a cup of tea and reading in my bed. But I really find that rest, and my practice around it is put to the test and really shows up for me when I'm on the road, when I'm traveling. And so what are those things that I can bring with me that are going to help me, you know, lean into that? And then also, what can I be doing at home while I have some downtime to prepare for a more restful travel experience the next time I go out? And so all of my routines and rituals are something that are applicable, you know, no matter what. And so a lot of the hotels I stay in, they don't have hot water, no tea for me at bedtime. Like that's not something that I want to become attached to because it's not accessible to me oftentimes. But a book and breath work always is. And I was surprised. I mean, I do breath work on an app through one of our wellness partners. And being pretty new to the practice, I was surprised how quickly I was able to pick up, you know, what the best breath work was for my sleep schedule and learn that in order to self-guide. And I'm not a wellness practitioner, and by no means am I anywhere close to, you know, knowing any of the other breath works, but kind of like, okay, I know that this pattern works for me in sort of calming my nervous system and getting me ready for a sleepier existence. I also have found that it's helpful, like the different things that I'm reading. So I have something that I read at night that is sort of guided towards like, okay, I can only get through a few pages before I'm ready to tap out and go to sleep. And then for books that I'm like, I want to like fly through this. It's so good. It's so easy to read. I'm actually putting those in as reading breaks during the day if I can, or sometimes during morning coffee or something like that, recognizing that like, while this book is amazing, I would stay up all night looking at it. So I have something that's like more prone to me being like, this is a little boring. Let me go ahead and tune down for sleep now.
Yeah.
But I think that, you know, with all of this, it's so individual, and it's also can be a conversation that you have to have with your partner, right? And I've certainly been in relationships with very different sleep schedules, and trying to meet in the middle sometimes can be really frustrating. And I think that it's something that, you know, we should be able to talk about more openly with friends, with bandmates, with partners about like, here's what I'm trying to do to optimize essentially my whole life through rest. You know, what are your needs? What are my needs? And how can we make these both work so that we're both feeling well rested? And those conversations can be ongoing. Like I said at the beginning of the call, like we can go through different seasons with rest. And so it might be something where you need to, you know, talk about it, try something else, and sort of allow an ongoing level of mindfulness around this so that you're continually finding ways to tap into it despite, you know, what the seasons may bring.
I think that's really powerful too, to talk about like, you know, how you negotiate that, whether it's with partner, with its, you know, bandmates, collaborators, people that you're traveling and working with, and sort of normalizing that conversation. And this idea of maybe just like sort of planning what you might be able to bring with you and what you might be able to utilize when you're on the road, when you're traveling, really like having those conversations up front to start. Really, I mean, I think planning together, but also like how do we support each other as we like go through life so intimately, and like, you know, traveling and working and sort of doing everything. How do you negotiate that, and how can we support one another in that? I think that's a really lovely intention.
Yeah, and it's ongoing. I was on one of these workshops over the summer, and we were talking about, I think, ritual, and sleep had come up. And, you know, for touring folks, there's kind of a sleep checklist of things that you can bring with you on tour. Again, this might be a good time to have that conversation so folks can get them ready for January tours. But it includes like a sleep mask and earplugs. It can include a scent spray. And I've never been able to sleep in earplugs. So I was like, well, that's not going to work for me. And then somebody actually mentioned they wear like a sleep headband that has like built-in sort of soundproofing. So that's on my list to try out as, you know, one of the techniques that I can use in sort of more volatile sleep situations, which I think is part of life on the road, is that you might not get to sleep in your own hotel room. You might be next to someone who snores or comes in late or whatever that looks like. And so like also sort of releasing the frustration that we might feel about sleep, and sometimes sleep is hard to find. And starting to say, like, I have the things that I need that can help me tap into this place. And scent is certainly one of them. And, you know, sleep is a 5 sense experience. So it's how you feel, like what the textures are. Also on that sleep list is like a pillowcase that you like. So you're not using like the scratchy hotel or tour bus provided pillowcase, but you have something that you're used to sleeping with. And so like recognizing those 5 senses can actually help you develop your own checklist for like how you can build resilience and find sleep for rest in other moments. And I know we're focusing a lot on sleep. I think that's maybe because I'm a little low on that right now. But one of the other things that I think we should talk about is meditation. And that's become part of my daily practice, thanks to one of the practitioners in the Backline Network, Emily. Emily Kessler is an amazing guide, and she actually is doing a free course for Backline folks in January. So we'll make sure that those links go up soon and people can tap into this as well. But for the first time, I'm able to find rest anywhere that I am, in any, on a plane, in a venue, in any place, because I know how to tap into this meditative state. And I think that's something that's been really helpful for me, especially if I only get like a festival 4, knowing that I can tap into a state of active rest during the day has been really helpful in sort of, again, not guilting myself about the lack of sleep that I've gotten, but being like, I have the tools to find some level of recharge here. So I like to think of it as my portable battery. And I know that you are a meditation person too. So what are your thoughts on how people can tap into that and what it looks like?
Yeah. So, I think it's so important to remind people that it's a practice, right? So sometimes people, if they're starting meditation or mindfulness, or, I think guided meditation is such a great way to start. People can sometimes, maybe get frustrated or feel like I'm supposed to be feeling this, I'm supposed to be not thinking about everything that's going on in my life. People can sort of, I think, get frustrated when they first start this. So I really like the idea. One, I just going back to the 5 senses. I think that's such a great way to get present. So there are like a lot of really simple mindfulness pieces to do around that, just like looking in your environment and like experiencing the sensory information around you. Feel like I sort of got lost from your question, but my point is that I think again, like, it's very individual. So it may not be that you're sitting on a cushion and you're sort of like just following your breathing. It may be that you are listening to a guided meditation in nature. It may be that you I use the Calm app sometimes, and they have like stories. People tell stories in these like lovely, like really gentle voices that can help you kind of relax. And so I think it's important to find whatever doorway into meditation or mindfulness, or I look at like hypnosis and self-hypnosis on that continuum as well. And I think a lot of times that can have to do with like what senses are sort of most how do we resonate? Are we kinesthetic? Are we visual? Are we are we what are the other senses? I can't think of them right now, but just like figuring out what works for us, and trying that out and being really patient with ourselves. I'm a very visual person, so I love being guided through that type of thing. And that's what I tend towards is a very sort of like a visual journey type process. And I think the guided pieces are so nice because there's a way that someone's like holding you in that space, and you don't have to do it by yourself. And we have so many resources to draw from, a lot of which are free. And so, yeah, just exploring and experimenting, and also knowing that the more that whatever we find that works, our bodies and our minds start to get to know it, and it just becomes easier and easier every time we do it.
I'm so glad that you brought up both guided practices and that there is help out there. I mean, I think sleep is one of those things that, like, can be so frustrating. Rest too, of like, oh, well, I have insomnia, or I like really can't do this. I don't know how to rest. And I think that that's okay, to just like accept, and practicing acceptance is easier said than done. That's one of my harder things in this journey of life. But there are practitioners that you can work with. You mentioned, hypnosis as a modality. I just started working with an executive functioning coach, and it's not therapy. We're talking about productivity. We're talking about how do I feel when I wake up in the morning, and sort of fine tuning some of these pieces around nutrition, rest, and what my work day looks like has actually given me a lot of space to lean into feeling more rested. And so if this is something that you are struggling with, like this is something you can come to Backline and have that conversation about. I'm really having a hard time finding rest. That's an okay thing to have, and it doesn't have to be, a mental health challenge, so to speak. It's like, this is your life. And if you feel like you're lacking in some piece of your life that you want to tap into, like, I really encourage people to follow that lead, because that is really where the nectar is. And so if there's something that you feel like you're lacking, allow that to be okay, and like go out in search of that and have those conversations to see if you can fine tune that. Because I've only been working with my coach for a few months now, but just to have a space to say, hey, I have no idea what my nighttime routine looks like. Have a sounding board for that has been really helpful.
Yeah, I think that piece of like they're thinking about how this, even though it is very individualized, and it depends on so many parts of our experience, that like we can talk with friends or professionals, and that like we don't have to figure that out on our own. That it can be really nice to get help, formal and informal and both.
Yeah, no doubt. I know that you maybe might be able to walk us through a guided practice. Is that something you want to do?
Yeah, absolutely.
I'm going to go camera off for this, if that's all right.
Yeah, that's fine. That's fine. So this will be kind of just a short and sweet process, but just an opportunity to maybe just slow down and meet ourselves in this conversation. Get a little more information about what might be helpful for each of us. So you can do this. You might find a spot in your environment or something to sort of focus on if you want to keep your eyes closed, or you could just sort of lower your gaze into your lap or the floor, or you could close your eyes. Whatever feels good today. There's no right or wrong. Just going to do a little simple relaxation, slowing down and listening. So letting yourself just find a comfortable position. Ideally with your body supported. And just taking a few moments to just notice the movement of your breath. You don't need to breathe in any particular way. Just noticing sort of how it moves as you just allow yourself to settle in. Noticing the chair beneath you. Your feet are on the floor. Just noticing how it feels to have the bottoms of your feet making contact with the floor. And if you like, just even allowing your face and your jaw to just begin to relax. You might allow your shoulders to just drop into the frame of your body. Maybe even feel your arms and your hands just getting a little heavier as you allow them to relax. Allowing the area around your heart and your belly to relax. You might even allow your shoulder blades to just ever so slightly slide down your back. And even allowing your hips to just release a little bit into the chair. There's not anything to do or nothing in particular that needs to happen in this time. And just noticing the tops of your legs, noticing your shins and your calves. If it feels good, you can allow the tops of your feet and the bottoms of your feet to relax. Even each one of your toes. And if there's any other areas of your body that could use a little attention or just a little letting go, you can just allow those parts to find a sense of ease, to be supported by your chair. And if it feels good to you, you could even take a hand or your hands to your belly or to your chest. Just start taking a moment to be with ourselves in this very simple way. Just noticing the temperature of your hand or your hands. And just noticing how that feels to take this moment. And just taking a few more moments to just listen. Listen to anything that your body might need today or this week. Noticing any things that might have popped up in this conversation about what's restful for you, what's nourishing. And as we look toward this time in the next couple of weeks where many of us might have a bit of downtime. Just listening to any bits of information from your deeper self about what you might do to support yourself, what you might need. It could be something small or something big. Another something came through now or something comes through later tonight or tomorrow. Just trusting just the wisdom of the intelligence of your body and your being to guide you toward what you need, to get clear on what's nourishing for you. Knowing that these questions can be ongoing, they don't need to end in this process or in this conversation. And taking just another few moments to listen to your body and your inner knowing. And as you're at your own pace and as you're feeling ready, beginning to bring your awareness back to the outer world, or to sort of more aware of your surroundings. Your eyes were closed, eventually opening your eyes. And just taking a few moments to look around your space, really orienting right here and now. Noticing any colors or textures, shapes. Noticing the temperature of the room. Any sounds that you hear.
I really appreciate the opportunity to slow down in this conversation, and find some space to sort of integrate what we've talked about. For me, a lot of what was coming up was really the intention to continue to have this conversation and continue to focus on rest, and recognize that all rest is good rest, and that there are so many different ways to tap into it. And I hope that that is what we're leaving folks with here today as well. So thank you for really putting that into practice with that.
Yeah, absolutely.
Any final thoughts as we close out this conversation?
Yeah, I kind of wanted to bring it back to kind of where you started and Tricia Hersey's work and the NAP ministry, and um, just sort of, I guess, maybe just a reminder of like letting this be a process, um, letting us have patience and compassion with ourselves as we learn about it and practice, and also remembering like this is like personal and individual, but also like it's societal, right? I mean, we are pushing back against systems that don't support us to be well, and an unsustainable unsustainable pace of productivity and work that and so it just, yeah, just like a real reminder of like this is a big, a big shift and a big task, and yeah, to go
Yeah,
easy on ourselves.
I feel that very much. And, part of my journey with this has been recognizing that the system is not designed for me to rest, nor is it designed for joy. And so by being intentional and choosing to tap into rest and joy, I'm really able to sort of break some of the systemic, capitalist systems that exist around me and prioritize the self, and prioritize the health of my community in that, when I feel rested, I'm able to be a better partner, be a better boss, be a better friend. And so I find that, this is really the work that I want to be doing in my life, is finding ways to tap into this and finding ways to rest and also to give rest to others. And I think that that is a really nice, intention to set as we go into the break, and potentially integrate this work in January. Is really thinking about rest for yourself and your communities, and what work needs to be done to improve the areas that you touch. And so I'm really excited to do this over the break, and hopefully come into 2023 feeling more rested and like that battery is fully charged. But also practice some acceptance for that not always being possible, and sort of knowing that, even without a full night's sleep, you can tap into active rest during the day. You can be honest with other folks about where you are in your, restfulness and in your journey, asking for support when you need it. All of these things I think are really grounding, helpful principles for this exact moment in time. Thank you for joining me for this. This has been amazing for me. And, just the opportunity to talk about something like rest is joyful. And I hope that it resonates with folks. And again, if you need any support on your journey, please reach out to us at Backline. We are here to help. Thank you, and have a very restful break.